Hi, everyone. I'm Diana, and I'm sitting here with former police officer Sean Shapiro and managing partner of Diamond & Diamond Lawyers, Sandra Ziskin. And today we're discussing the civil ramifications of drunk driving.
There's a big problem, though, with the legislation, and Sean, you'll understand what I'm saying. The problem that we have as civil lawyers with these sort of cases is if they are charged and criminally convicted, it's technically then an intentional act, and the insurance can vitiate coverage, which means they don't have to cover you for the full amount of your coverage. They'll only cover you up to like $200,000. So there's almost like a gap there where, specifically for drunk driving, specifically in these situations, they should make the insurance companies cover the full pop and not use this criminal conviction to hurt the civil. Because then, you have a situation like I have often where people will come to me and say, yeah, the guy was charged with driving under the influence. And very selfishly for the client, I'm saying to them, well, let's hope he doesn't get convicted, because if he gets convicted, now your insurance has dropped down $800,000.
Wait. You're saying that if I get hit by a drunk driver and I get injured, my insurance company will limit how much money I get? Or
it's his insurance company, because you're suing him for pain and suffering. And I'm saying him, it could be him or
the secondary
person, because you're suing them for, so your insurance company, the no fault portion doesn't change, but then you're suing the at fault driver. So let's say in this case, Sean hits you, which he never would because he's lovely.
Sean.
Yeah. It's Sean. So you're suing Sean for your pain and suffering, for your income loss, etc.
Right.
If Sean is convicted of a criminal offense, then he's done an intentional act. And intentional acts are not covered by insurance company.
So you mean to tell me that if, again, I'm going to repeat myself, if I get hit by a drunk driver and something awful happens to me, I can only get a max of $200,000 from the other guy's insurance company?
So your insurance, if you have valid insurance, your insurance will make up the rest of that amount of money.
Yes.
But imagine a scenario where you're a pedestrian, you have no insurance.
Right.
Sean hits you, you're stuck with the $200,000.
It's the max, unless there's a payment plan for the rest of his life.
Correct.
Okay. And that's only if the person gets charged on a criminal.
It has to be criminal. So careless doesn't matter if they get convicted of it careless, because it's, like we said, quasi-criminal. It's not criminal.
Okay.
Anything like that, anything not dangerous driving is criminal. Anything under dangerous driving, so unsafe left turn, whatever it is, failure to yield, but the minute they're charged of any intentional act, it affects the insurance.
That is so problematic on so many levels.
It is.
Because you're basically, as the drunk driver's insurance company, you're basically saying, sorry, there's nothing we can do. But on a criminal level, do I have a way to, if they get charged criminally, do I have a way to go after them from there?
There's the Victim Services Compensation Board, but like Sean can speak to it, it's very small amounts.
It's something rather than nothing, but it's minimal money. You're seeing people being paid out $15,000, $20,000 type thing versus hundreds of thousands of dollars that they would otherwise be eligible for.
And in the case of death or serious injury, the problem is if it's a dependent person. So example, if it's for example, the breadwinner of the house, whether it's the mother or the father, and God forbid they're killed, and all of these dependents are dependent on their salary for the rest of their life, that could be millions and millions of dollars of a claim.
Yeah.
It's funny you mention that, because in the States, I think it's the States, they just had it go through the media where if someone kills the breadwinner, they're responsible for the support of those children, which is interesting. I don't remember what country, what state, but it's an amazing concept.
In Florida, they have very stringent laws about that sort of thing. They also have stringent laws, way more than we have in Canada, of if you kill a child, because it's in the States, they allow much bigger awards for that than we do in Canada.
Or like kill a child, not just a plain old accident. We're talking like kill a child because you're driving under the influence.
Driving any type of accident, whether it's drunk or not, or negligent.
Wow.
We had a case like that in the States, and you can max out the policy for that. Here it's not. Here, no, not so much. It depends on the circumstances. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. But it's in the States, they do allow for way more. We don't have that here. We should allow for it, because it's like you said, it seems like they almost get a discount.
Right.
Well, but the insurance company really gets the discount. It's really the insurance company that gets the discount.
It seems kind of like vicious for the insurance company to do that to a family that like literally just.
Yeah. So like in the Mutso case, which is the very famous case, it didn't matter in that case because that family was worth millions and millions of dollars.
They sue him civilly for that.
You sue them civilly. So even if the insurance only covers $200,000, the family was then responsible for the rest, and they had enough money
I saw something
to pay it out. I'm assuming it was paid out. I'm assuming it was done but that settlement would have been obviously quiet and there would have been a non-disclosure signed, but the family could pay. But in a situation where it's just like an average Joe and they don't have assets.
The recent case, it was just a young boy with not much to his name.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
So it is problematic for us as civil lawyers. So on one hand, from a point of view as a mother and a driver on the road, I want a very strong conviction because I want them not to go forward with it. But if I'm speaking selfishly for my clients, I always want my clients to be able to get the compensation they need.
It's a tough position.
Yes. And in fact, when you're doing a civil case, the only conviction that matters, the only conviction that's actually admissible in court, it's not the charge, it's the conviction. So if you were charged with drunk driving and you were only convicted of careless, the only thing that could be introduced as evidence in the civil court would be the conviction.
Because everything else is an allegation.
Right.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Yes.
But that family, I guess the other family in the Mutso case, with the way they had that, like you said, that because they actually had from the civil perspective, they were able to go after the family on a civil level. I mean, I guess there's some, I don't know what could bring about those feelings back of no money in the world.
There's no money in the world. So there's no money in the world. But for example, in those cases, what we're looking for is it's not about the money, to be clear, because the money will never make you whole again, ever. There's no amount of money that will make you whole. But what it will do, for example, like the Mutso case and from what I know about it, but reading the public documents, is things like 24-hour attendant care, because I know one or both of them at one point were on suicide watch. Yeah. So they needed somebody with them 24/7 to make sure that they didn't kill themselves.
Right.
Things like that. And it's so morbid and difficult to talk to, but we have to have these serious discussions because this is a consequence. Because you're not only ruining your life when you're drinking and driving. I mean, and you are. Like even the Mutso family, you're ruining, he ruined their life, right? Yeah. Like they have to deal with this for the rest of their life. They have to have this sort of stain on their reputation for the rest of their life. You know, they could be a wonderful family, and I know they give philanthropically and they're really good, but you have sort of the stain. So he's ruining that life, then he's ruining the lives of the people he affected, and then it goes on because you know then they have to live with the ripple effect. They have to live with it. Yeah. So the money goes up for things like that. So the money can pay for things like a PSW to be with them 24/7. Right. It can pay for psychological counseling. It can pay for everything that the OHIP system will not cover for them. That's when the money comes into use. I had a case myself with a family that lost both their children. It was not drunk driving, it was speeding. It was street racing. It was literally street racing. Oh my God,
get over it. You're not in a movie.
And by the way, the defendant in this case was in his 40s. It wasn't a young child. It was in his 40s with his own family, street racing at 3:00 in the morning, hit another car. Both cars exploded. Everybody died. What? And yeah. It was an awful case. And they lost, the family that I represented lost both their children. It was really a horrible situation. And I remember, and at the time I said to them, I said, donate the money for a trust, do what you want to do. Because you can't, at that point, you're talking to a family. And by the way, that's the only time in my life, I've been practicing for 20 somewhat, I started when I was 10. I started when I was 15. But the only time I've ever cried on an intake, I couldn't control myself. They were fine and I was bawling like a baby. I just couldn't.
You guys are parents, so I can't imagine
it was too much. It was just too much because I could, the empathy I felt for them was so difficult. And you're sitting there talking about money with these people and you feel awful because you're like, there's nothing I can offer you to make this better.
Yeah, but then it helps you do better at your job, right? Because you have that feeling towards them, because like we have here at our Diamond and Diamond, we have families that walk in and give us these tragic stories, and all we can really do is empathize with them.
Right.
And then just push as hard as you can with the insurance company that's trying to give them that $200,000 or whatever they're trying to do.
Well, like Sean's case, he gets sort of not the satisfaction, but we're both sort of in the position of helping people. But you do it to get them in jail or to get them whatever. Mine is just to get them as whole as I can.
Right.
Which they never are.
But if it's not for the officers taking all the information and doing a thorough job, you've got nothing to go on.
Correct.
So it's really it's two sides of the same coin to some degree.
Right. It's 100%. I rely very heavily on the officers in these situations, and in this case in particular, listen, there was no sort of defense, and the guy died. The guy died.
That's so awful.
So, at that point, I think that, the officer is like, do I still charge? Because, you can charge, you can charge even
the
though they're
estate
dead.
or whatever?
Yeah, you can charge,
I've never been in a situation to have to go down that road, but I imagine you would go through and provide the case, and even though you're not officially charging a person,
right? But at that point, we even ask the officers. There's just no point. I think even the family says to the officers, "Don't even bother.
Yeah.
It's done."
What can you get from that?
But yeah, it's the worst. It's actually the worst. So all we can do as lawyers and police officers is do the best to give the people some sense of justice and feel good about themselves.